This guy has a huge problem. Every time he falls asleep, he immediately wakes up in a nightmarish world full of monsters. It's pretty much impossible to survive there, and whenever he dies, he returns to Earth. Kim Woo-jin has been trapped in this exhausting cycle for 12 years. He's gotten used to the pain of dying, but it's impossible to get used to being constantly exhausted for 12 straight years. He tries to get medical help, but no specialist can figure out what's wrong with him. To stop dying in that hellish nightmare, he's forced to study and master weaponry, martial arts, jungle survival, military tactics, and every other discipline that might help him stay alive a little longer. Thanks to all that effort, he starts dying less often. But the fundamental problem of sleep deprivation never goes away. All he wants is to lie down in his bed and get some goddamn sleep, even if only once. Then one day, blood suddenly starts pouring from his nose. Before he can do anything, everything around him becomes blurry, and he dies right there in a pool of blood. When he opens his eyes again, he feels like he's finally had a proper night's sleep, but the sight around him is far too familiar to be happy about it. He's back in the same nightmare world. Only this time, there's no second chance. It's a terrifying realization, especially with a giant lizard monster lurking nearby. But thanks to his vast experience, our guy knows exactly how to survive here. In fact, he's become the top predator. He leaps out of his hiding spot and slices the monster in half with a single clean strike. Then he begins searching through the corpse for its core. It looks disgusting, but he swallows it whole. Because of a unique ability he discovered, every time he eats a monster core, he gains a portion of that monster's powers. As planned, the safest first move was to head to a brighter place untouched by monsters. Woo-jin headed for the safe haven, while Aura farming on trees along the way. A night had passed, and he was savoring a welcome change in his life. Finally, he can get a night of perfect sleep whenever he wants. It had been a month since he permanently crossed over to a much harsher reality. The adjustment period was short. He was already proficient when it came to survival. Throughout the month, he continued heading towards the light. Just because he feels more liberated to fight now doesn't mean he regularly seeks out a hunt. Risking his life for fun in this place would be pure madness. Still, there are days when he can't fight the itch to get into a fight. Coincidentally, that itch crops up whenever hunger strikes. Today's breakfast was a giant bat. A sneak attack was all it took to take the poor monster down. As per his routine, he carved up the dead monster's body and fished for the monster core. This essence, present in every monster's body, gives the hunter the chance to gain new power upon consumption. Ever since he made these things his snack of choice, adapting to the harsh surroundings had become a lot easier. He also discovered another relevant fact during the first month. According to the badge he found in his pocket, the body he took over belonged to someone with the status of a third-class mercenary. Surprisingly, he could read the system of writing in this world. The existence of mercenaries and the identification token suggests that people are living and thriving somewhere in this violent world. Finally, he could see the light at the end of his month-long journey. On the outskirts of the monster-free zone, he was taken aback by the sight of a clearly man-made trap laid on the floor. That can only mean one thing. There might be people nearby. Elated, he ran faster towards his destination. A few minutes later, he reached a clearing and found a humble wooden house. Excited to interact with another human after a month of solitude, he knocked on the door and found that it was unlocked. He cautiously entered and called out to see if anyone was home. On top of a dining table, he found a leather-bound book. The title reads Demonic Realm Chronicles. Skimming through its contents, he was taken aback. This book detailed the history and practical knowledge of the realm, an encyclopedia of sorts. Everything was recorded quite meticulously too. For the sake of his survival, this thing would be a must-read. While he was engrossed in its contents, he didn't notice the man of the house entering with a crossbow locked, loaded, and aimed at his head. The old man was wary of the stranger standing in the middle of his dining room. One foul move and he wouldn't hesitate to put a hole in Woo-jin's head. While Woo-jin was glad to see another human being after so long, Woo-jin recognized that he must look like a home invader or robber. He raised his hand to signal that he didn't mean any harm. He just found a house in a remote area and came in out of curiosity. The old man did not give a damn about his reason. He was shooed away like an unwanted animal. Woo-jin did not escalate the tension, but before going his own way, he wanted to ask the old man something. Would it be possible to borrow the book? He really wanted to give it a read. If needed, he would be willing to pay a price. The old man asked what he would do if he were refused access to the book. Woo-jin truthfully answered that in that case he won't hesitate to take it by force. He reached for his blade, alarming the old man as he gripped his crossbow tighter. They sized each other up for what felt like forever. Woo-jin had no real estimate of the old man's danger level, but he could feel that he would never lose. Ultimately, the old man lowered his weapon, and cooler heads prevailed. He believed that a petty thief wouldn't necessarily bargain for a book. He introduced himself as Hector. Kim Woo-jin also gave a proper introduction, but his name was quite peculiar and hard to pronounce around these parts, so he went by Jin instead. Hector understood that the young man wanted to get some reading done, but the book was precious to him too. He cannot lend it out to a stranger. If he really wanted to study the material, he'd better stay for a while. In return for free lodging and reading time, he could help with some simple chores around the house. It was a great deal, one that Jin had no problem accepting. And so, he ended up staying at Old Man Hector's house. He was a gruff man, but he was not a bad person by any means. He was even kind enough to feed Jin home-cooked meals. That night was the first time he'd had warm soup in a long time. It was so delicious that the first bite brought him to tears. He briefly considered that Hector might be an angel in disguise. The old man routinely went out to hunt by sunrise. One time, the old man spilled that he was scouring the woods to take revenge on the monster that killed his comrades. Hector looked like a weathered warrior, strong and stoic. Seeing him so nervous whenever he went out to hunt was worrying. Whatever it was he was looking for must be a considerably powerful beast. When the old man leaves, Jin reads through the chronicles, absorbing as much information from the pages as he can. The history of this accursed realm began with the Northern Empire. It was a tale as old as time. The king of the north was blinded by greed and laid his hands on the otherworldly gate. Legends say that on the other side of the gate, the truth of all creation and immense power can be found. On that day, when the greedy emperor tried to force his way into the promise of unlimited power, the calamity was triggered. All sorts of powerful monsters emerged from the otherworldly gate. With their power and sheer numbers, turning the entire northern region into a demonic realm only took 9 years. In an effort to push back, humanity united many fragmented factions to form the Order Alliance. They built a barrier to stop the expansion of the demonic realm. That's enough lore drop for the day. As Jin expected, there was a lot of useful information crammed into the book. According to written reports, the deeper you go into the demonic realm, the stronger the monsters are. Jin's own experience backed this up. The monsters he encountered got significantly weaker as he headed towards the light. While he was digesting some new and interesting information, Hector came running back to the house. Jin was pondering how deep he was inside the demonic realm he had been wandering, while Hector was sprinting for his life. How strong was Jin exactly? A chance to find out might have just presented itself. A pack of werewolves had turned the old man from the hunter to the hunted. Leading the pack was a ferocious bipedal beast, hairy and wild. Surrounding the alpha were countless hungry wolves. A few meters away from the door, Hector stopped and turned around to fire some crossbow bolts. It wasn't enough to deter his furry pursuers. The alpha easily destroyed the bolts with its sharp claws. As the werewolf closed the gap, Hector could feel his imminent death getting nearer by the second. Fortunately, Jin had noticed the commotion and walked out of the house to check it out. He brandished his blade while looking at the beast chasing after the old man who fed and housed him. Ever the kind-hearted man, Hector pleaded for Jin to run away. He did run, but not in the direction Hector was pointing. Without a ripple of emotion, he was locked in on the ferocious beast up ahead. Jin gathered momentum and jumped up, covering a massive distance in the blink of an eye. The alpha tried to claw him out of the air, thinking of him as a nuisance. Jin corrected that dismissive attitude by slashing the alpha's whole arm wide open, exposing flesh and bone. He did not stop there. The blade cut deeper and deeper until the alpha werewolf was sliced cleanly in half. The rest of the pack couldn't even respond to something so absurd. In their eyes, their boss was supposed to be the strongest there was. Similarly, Old Man Hector watched the young man with awe and fear. Taking down a werewolf in a single slash was not normal at all. Jin broke the silence by audaciously asking if the alpha was considered a strong monster. Hector found it bizarre that the boy he took in was asking such a ridiculous question. Everyone in the area knows that werewolves are strong, incredibly so. Jin would love to know more about these monsters after he deals with the rest of the pack. The wolves looked at him with rage. He just killed their alpha after all. Jin estimated that he probably faced stronger monsters. But given that about 40 dogs were surrounding the house, he might be screwed if he gets careless. Instead of fighting all these mutts, slicing the throat of the second-in-command sounded like the most efficient way to shatter their crumbling morale. It was easy to identify the second strongest dog, aside from the dead alpha. The brown-haired werewolf standing at the very front with an exceptionally large build was a promising target. When Jin raised his blade, an air of death emanated from his stance. The werewolf felt the menacing force coming off him and hesitated to make a move. It tried to size him up and looked into his eyes, but eventually averted its gaze like a scared puppy. The second-in-command started moving, but he wasn't loading up an attack. He was moving to get the fuck out of there, running for his life and leaving the rest of the pack to fend for themselves. Second-in-command pathetically yelped, presumably telling the other dogs to scatter and run. The pack looked embarrassed by their supposed leader's shameless actions. Even so, they knew they were no match against the human who diced up the alpha. Hector was more surprised that the wolves, known for their pride and bravery, would retreat with their tails tucked between their legs. In his mind, Jin was actually impressed that the second-in-command assessed the situation and made the right call. After getting rid of the ferocious threat, Hector and Jin returned inside. They carved up the alpha's corpse, cleanly harvesting its ridiculously expensive pelt. There was actually a bounty on the head of this alpha werewolf, 40 gold coins to be exact. Having no frame of reference with regard to the economy, Jin asked the old man if 40 gold coins were a lot of money. Indeed it was. 40 should be enough to live comfortably without working for about 6-7 years. If a trash monster like a werewolf could net him such a huge bounty, doesn't that mean he could just find and kill more monsters whenever he's short on cash? That way, he could keep raking in the bag and live a comfortable life. Perhaps all the suffering over the last 12 years has led him to an easier one. Aside from the intact werewolf pelt, Hector gave Jin some jerky, a pouch of silver coins, and a pioneer map. He tasked the young man with taking the loot to Pioneer Village and selling it to a man named Jacob. He already marked the Pioneer Village on the map. He was certain that Jacob would buy the werewolf hide for a fair price. After receiving the old man's kindness over the past few days, he hesitated to accept something so valuable. Hector insisted that he was simply paying the fair price of revenge. He already told the kid that he had a grudge against this beast. He thanked his mysterious guest for finally fulfilling what he couldn't over the years. He just hopes that they meet again if the opportunity arises. Jin shook the old man's hand and also expressed his gratitude. The very next day, the pelt was bundled up, and he was ready to go. He had gotten used to living slowly with Hector, but now, it's time to return to the wilderness. On his way to the destination marked on the map, he was being surveilled by a familiar figure. The cowardly werewolf was keeping a worryingly close eye on his departure. The beast looked like it was up to no good. Pioneer Village wasn't too far, a whole day of walking, and he had reached the first walled settlement he'd ever seen in the middle of the demonic realm. He entered the village without a fuss after showing his mercenary identity token. It was quite well stocked for a small town. The residents weren't particularly welcoming to newcomers, though. The dirty looks he was getting were not pleasant in the slightest. He chalked it up to being a stranger in a strange land. Everyone's on high alert. It was understandable, truly. In a world like this, people can be more dangerous than monsters. To get some much-needed information, Jin went straight to the pub. In there, he blended in with the rowdy crowd without a problem. Jin sat in the bar, and the bartender offered him some beer. He didn't come here for the drink. More importantly, he wanted information regarding a man named Jacob. Upon hearing that name, the man sitting next to him reacted curiously. While slicing and snacking on an apple, the man claimed to be Jacob. Jin's first impression was that the guy had the face of a scammer. Despite his reservations, Jin stated that he was sent by Hector to sell a werewolf hide. Upon hearing that, Jacob stood up from his seat and dropped his knife and apple. The man assumed that Hector killed the werewolf himself. Jin did not correct his assumption. After inspecting the wares, Jacob confirmed that the werewolf hide was real. By this time, the entire pub's attention was lasered in on the wolf hide displayed on the bar counter. Jacob's shock quickly twisted into malevolent glee. Without saying a word, the rowdy crowd of the pub encircled Jin with weapons in hand. It looks like Hector was deceived by this Jacob guy. The scammer played with the werewolf pelt and told the boy to get lost and leave the loot. Jin sighed. He should have trusted his scam radar. Faces don't lie after all. Still, he tried to discuss business in a civil manner. Jacob was annoyed that the kid wasn't getting the hint. In truth, old man Hector was an investment. Keeping that old fart alive in the middle of the woods and selling him supplies caused a loss. Conveniently, the hide should cover all the accumulated losses over time. Jin briefly considered just killing the bastard right then and there, but he stayed strong. He doesn't want to kill a human being over a mere hide. He was truly planning to walk away and let the matter go, like the nice guy he is. That was until Jacob pushed his buttons and spilled beer all over him. The scammer had finally done it. It is fucking on. Wu Jin stood up, letting the bar stool fall. He walked past the goons, who threatened him with menacing looks, and headed for the door. Jacob was very pleased with himself. He intimidated the kid to surrender such valuable material, right? Wrong. Jin was just walking towards the door to get something heavy to seal it with. He turned to Jacob and gave the scumbag a lesson. If he intended to scam someone from the start, it would have been better to go for the neck instead of the back. The scammer scoffed, not realizing what was about to happen. Since the kid doesn't value his own life, Jacob ordered his goons to attack. Jin let them get closer to him. It would be easier and faster that way. People like these won't even give him a guilty conscience once he's done taking their heads. Jin parried the closest goon who tried to stab him with sloppy technique. The parry was so strong that it got the man's whole arm vibrating along with his blade. While stunned, cutting his stomach and letting the entrails pour out was as easy as pie. The next few goons who tried to get to him started falling like flies. A big guy with an axe tried to cut him down with impressive force but horrible timing and skill. In response, he turned a nearby table over to bury the big guy in furniture and soup. While trying to push the heavy wooden table away, the big guy lost all strength when Jin cut his fucking head off. Wu Jin was cold-bloodedly adding to his kill streak like he was taking a casual stroll in the park. Jacob looked at the boy he tried to rob and murder and realized that he wasn't built for this shit. A fighter this strong in this small area, there was no way Jacob wouldn't know about someone like that. At this rate, his goons will fall and he'll die for nothing. The fastest goon in the pub tried to sneak a dual blade attack from Jin's flank, but both arms were cut off before they could make contact. The bald brawler was next. Jin rolled the guy with a shoulder bump and literally dug his fingers through the poor man's chest. To finish the job with a fatality, he separated the brute's upper and lower body with a clean slice. It took him less than a minute to clear the pub of an entire gang. Jacob tried to cause a commotion, yelling at his remaining men to run so he could escape amidst the chaos. With the door blocked, Jacob and the remaining goons threw themselves through the glass windows just to get out. They might have gotten away if it weren't for another surprise. Outside the pub, a snarling red wolf was waiting. It didn't make sense. Why would a monster this vicious roam inside the village? The shock from the wolf's surprise appearance brought Jin enough time to catch up. A murderous scam victim on one side and a voracious beast on the other. There was nowhere to go. Jin casually looked at the giant dog and remembered the clever coward from the day before. The wolf's eyes lingered on him for quite some time. Jin coldly asked if the dog came here to die alongside the shameless scammers. Just like yesterday, the beast curled up in fear under Jin's gaze. To show that he did not come here with hostile intentions, the wolf whimpered and dropped to the ground, showing Jin its belly. It panted and wagged its tail like a well-trained house dog in front of him. The dog rolled around the grass like an energetic good boy. Jacob and the goons were equally confused and frightened by the bizarre turn of events. Woojin was quite annoyed by such mutt-like behavior. He didn't have time for this. But since the guy was seemingly trying to get his attention to get adopted, he threw the dog a little test. Jin pointed at Jacob and the goons and ordered the wolf to bite. Immediately, the sweet and energetic doggo was gone. In its place was the fearsome beast that ruled the nearby woods. The wolf maimed the goons without mercy, biting their faces off and inflicting as much pain as possible. Jin preferred seeing the mutt behave like an apex predator compared to the cutesy act. Jacob recoiled in cowardly terror as his goons were turned into mincemeat. The wolf bit into their flesh and nastily painted the ground with blood. The scammer's brain tried to come up with a plan to get out of this messed up situation. He reckoned that Jin was just a strong moron. Thinking that he could get away scot-free if he apologized a few times, he got down to his knees in surrender. He pleaded for mercy and promised to do anything to be forgiven. Of course, he was just doing this to get out and plot his revenge afterward. Jin wasn't stupid. He parked his blade right next to the scammer's head, scalping that son of a bitch just a little. Jacob didn't dare move a single inch. He was completely wrong about this kid. If there was one thing Jin hated, it was being taken for a pushover. Well, he was. He used to be that way. Back on Earth, his boss would put on an acting masterclass in apologizing for a delay in his salary. That pig would cite that the factory wasn't doing so well. Back then, Kim Woo-jin was a soft-hearted pushover who didn't want to rock the boat. So, he accepted. Showing that kind of weakness was a mistake. Once his boss knew he had no backbone, the salary that had been a week late was delayed by another month, multiple months, and eventually, he was slaving away for free. He was so pathetic that the manager had stopped putting on an act, snapping at him whenever he asked to get paid. As always, that fucker would claim that they should be sticking together when times are tough financially, even though his golf clubs were brand new. In the end, Woo-jin was branded selfish, and the treatment got worse. He never wanted to live that way ever again. Jin turned his back on the scammer as he mulled over the valuable lesson he had learned back then. As expected, Jacob immediately pounced on the opportunity to do some fuckery. He drew a short blade hidden in his waist and attacked. The bait was successful. Jin swiftly turned back around to welcome the sneak attack with perfect clarity. He grabbed Jacob's wrist and kept him upright within striking distance. People like Jakin do not know the meaning of the word remorse. The world would be a better place with one less person like that. Jin brandished his blade and decapitated the scammer's head. It was bloodier than a Tarantino movie. In this life, Kim Woo-jin vowed never to be taken advantage of again. With the entire gang of irrelevant goons wiped out, he turned to the mutt that helped him. What should he even do with this guy? Judging by the mutt's subservience, he seemed pretty determined to follow Jin. He even surrendered the stolen bag of coins looted from Jacob's corpse. The mutt was pretty clear in his desire to tag along. He was acting awfully close to the man who killed the alpha of his pack. The big guy seemed clever enough. They should get along from now on. After the massacre, Jin retreated to an inn that had a room big enough to accommodate his new furry friend. Once again, he had a restful and perfect deep sleep. Nights like those will never go unappreciated. The morning felt so refreshing. He felt like he could fly. After stretching his severely scarred body, he went out to a nearby stream to wash his bloody clothes. While trying his best to scrub away the stains of yesterday's scuffle, he contemplated. He just killed a person for the first time. He killed a whole gang, in fact. Much to his surprise and concern, he felt no hint of guilt in his conscience. Maybe it was because the people he killed were scum, but that wasn't the real reason. Instead of guilt, the emotion he felt at that time was the same as when he was out hunting monsters. It was an intense thrill, indescribable by mere words. There is a change occurring something inside him. Perhaps he was cursed. Nevertheless, the most important thing was survival. One thing is certain. His life in this nightmare world will be vastly different from the unfulfilled life he once led. He won't suffer absurdity, and he will live in abundance. That will be his mantra from now on. Alongside the mutt, he trekked towards the next human settlement nearby, 5th Pioneer City. He still needed a buyer for his werewolf pelt. For now, he instructed the mutt to stay nearby while keeping out of sight. He would attract too much attention inside the 5th. According to the chronicles he read, he would have to visit the nearest Order Alliance to receive a monster bounty. The fifth should have a branch of the Order Alliance. It did not take him long to find the place. When he walked into the pristine building in the middle of the city, he saw a bored employee manning the front desk. Upon confirming that he was in the right place, he dropped the werewolf pelt on the table. He just came by to collect some bounty. The employee was unenthusiastic, thinking he was being pranked with some dog skin. Upon seeing the whole head of a dead werewolf, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. This time, Jin did not deny killing the werewolf himself. He was escorted into a separate room and was politely asked to wait. A few minutes later, a different Alliance employee came in. Given the amount involved for the bounty's payout, they had to make sure that the pelt was the real deal. The experts confirmed its authenticity and authorized the release of the bountiful reward. This amount of gold coins in one sack should allow him to live a comfortably lazy life for 6-7 years. It didn't feel real until he saw the glimmering coins in person. His hands trembled. It was a different thrill compared to hunting.